We are going to get a little bit heavier in our topic today.
Yeah, this show we okay, so we've been pondering the questions for this show for a while. We've had the
Yeah,
guest in mind for a while, but we've been going back and forth on how to question uh, these the things that we have in our mind, how to talk to our guest about it, and how to have you listen to it and not feel offended by the topic matter.
right. But in fairness, we don't care as much about being offensive as we care about making sure that people are feeling empowered and comfortable with the topic, right? I mean, we don't want to offend people, but at the same time, it's more about making sure our listeners are getting what they need from us.
This is true.
And this topic is a sensitive topic. So I
Mhm.
guess it's a little fair warning here. We are going to talk about issues that are very sensitive today. Um, we are going to talk about sexual assault and rape. And before we get too heavy into the conversation, I want to make sure that our listeners are very clear on the difference, um, because there is a difference. So I just want to kind of set the record straight here. Rape is any form of unwanted sexual penetration, whereas sexual assault is a little different. It's more broad definition, and it's any unwanted sexual advance. So it does not include penetration. Rape is penetration. Sexual assault is any kind of advancement. Um,
Can oral sex so is oral sex I don't know how that works. Does that fall under assault? Or because when I think of sexual assault, I think of like, at workplace
right,
harassment, unwanted comments, people who touch you for entirely too long, or they hug you in the most inappropriate places while you're in a
right.
workplace, or just asking you on a date while you're at work. Those are what I think of sexual kind of sort of assault in a way, or
Mhm.
even all that. But then rape is, you say it's penetrative. The definition is penetrative. Does that include, let's say, someone ties someone up and forces oral sex on them, or someone ties someone up and then forces, I don't know.
I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to say definitively yes or no, but I would assume
Yeah.
that that's rape.
Yeah. Because I don't want there to be like that one person out there. Well, they didn't say oral sex, so I guess I'm clear. Yeah.
I think that's definitely a question that we would have to ask an attorney.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I know it's a weird question, but
Yeah, but it's a good question, and yeah, it's something we'd have to look into. I don't honestly know one way or another. I can assume, but I don't know for sure because that seems like a very legal question.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I was just wondering. I mean, I
Yeah,
know people
sure.
that have been in a real life situation where they have been raped
Mhm.
and may have also been impregnated and had to deal with that decision.
Mhm.
And this is all the way back to high school girls that were my friend. They be it's and it's just not to say that's all of them got raped. That's not what I'm trying to say, but there have been some instances where a friend would confide in me and they'll say, this happened. It was my boyfriend's friend or it was my uncle or something like that. And I don't know what to do because if I tell my family, they won't believe me. You know, he, if they're religious and there's that decision that weighs so heavily on their heart. And I feel like today's show is really about with all of that, with the weight of that decision, with the weight of knowing that that's happened. Every time you fall asleep, you may even see the person's eyes or something about them that reminds you of them. Every time you take a rest, is there a possibility of finding love after that? Because
Right. That's what we're going to really dive into today, of all of that trauma coming out of that. They say that 1 in 3 out of people, and I'm not talking about just women here on this one. 1 out of 3 people have experienced sexual assault to some degree, whether it was rape or sexual assault. Um, and statistically, I find that number to be very challenging to figure out, because how many people actually have experienced sexual assault that have never talked about it? So, how accurate can those numbers really be when there's just so many people that I think are out there that have never come forward, have never said out loud, I've been raped or I've been sexually assaulted? So, the numbers are obviously people who have participated in studies. And I just feel like there's just so many more people out there, men and women, that have never come forward to say, yes, I've experienced this to some degree.
I mean,
Uh,
there's the shame stigma, if
Absolutely.
you I mean, for men that have been through that, to say out loud that that's happened, whether it was from another man or another woman, um, there's the fear of people saying that you're weak, or people start to question who you are as a person. And then there's the women being called, words or being labeled certain terms because of it. So it's like something traumatic like that happens, and all you want is to talk to someone about it. But then there's the shame of it that clouds it.
Absolutely, which is why we felt this was an important topic to talk about today. For those who don't know, I've done a lot of work locally, volunteer work for humanitarian nonprofits. I've done some work for the homeless shelters, but the work that I've done that's really been near and dear to me is with the women's shelters, uh, and helping women who have been survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault or rape. We have a few of them here locally where I live, but in your own area, looking up those nonprofits and just donating time, donating money, donating items that they need. They need a lot. And our guest today that we are bringing on, that's how we met, actually, was my work at one of the shelters here. And she's worked with clients who have been through sexual assault, who've been through rape, and who have experienced domestic violence. Um, so let me introduce her first before we bring her on. Janine Nicodemus is a therapist and an advocate who works currently at Optimal Interventions. It's a company out of California that provides therapy, counseling, and other services to people.
Mhm.
She's worked with survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and is really passionate about helping people through empowerment. She uses mindful practices and sensory awareness to help her clients so that they can trust themselves again. So, without further ado, let's bring her on.
Yes, Janine, let's welcome her to the show.
Welcome, Janine. So happy to have you here with us.
Hello, hello, hello. Wow, is it on mute?
Sounds good. Hi, happy to be here.
We are
Hi,
so happy to
Janine.
have you.
Yes, thank you for being on our show today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope I can do it justice.
For sure. I mean, we've been
Yeah.
chatting a little in our group text about the show, and we have been anticipating talking to you about this
Oh,
topic because we think you are a wealth of information and you'll have a lot to share with our audience today.
oh, well, thank you. I know that this is a huge topic, and probably one show for you guys isn't going to cover everything that you want to say.
No, of course not.
So let's dive right in.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Sounds good.
So we're curious, after someone has experienced sexual assault or rape, what do you think are some of the steps they need to take to be able to trust again? Because we know that being able to, especially for women, if they've experienced sexual assault or rape, that being able to date again is so challenging. And you have to have some level of trust on a date, a first date, to know that this person isn't going to violate you. So, what do you think people can do to try and start that healing process to trust again?
So big question, right? Because it's different for every person, right? Every person has a different rape experience. Every person has a different sexual assault experience, a different background, how they handle these kinds of things. So, I think being ready to date is really difficult after sexual assault or rape. Being even cognizant of your body and different signs that you're feeling in yourself unsure or threatened, and so I think the first thing people probably need to do is have a really good therapist. So as they I think that's important.
It is.
And as a therapist, of course, I think I fully believe in the healing process through therapy. I also think group therapy is really amazing. There's so many programs in each county, each city that have women's programs. So I do think that learning about yourself, learning how you got into the situation that you got into, not that it's the victim's fault, because we never want to re-victimize somebody that's gone through that, but there is information that possibly people ignore when they're in a situation that puts them in this unsafe zone.
What is something, is there an example of something that someone might ignore that puts them in that situation?
Yeah, I think anytime we meet people, if we're out of touch with our own feelings,
Mhm.
and I'm a people pleaser, so I have a history of ignoring my own feelings myself, and I hear it from different clients as well. So I might, for the sake of being kind, I might ignore that internal, I don't feel really comfortable in this situation, and I
Gotcha.
ignore it,
Mhm.
and most of the time we can look back on and go, I felt this in my body, and I didn't want to ruin the party, or I didn't want to be the person that didn't want to go, or my friend set me up with this guy and I didn't want to let people down. Even though on the phone or a text or there were signs.
Mhm.
There's not always, but a lot of times you can retrace it and go, "Ugh, I should have," and then that becomes the thing that you feel so bad about yourself, because you're like,
Mhm.
why didn't I listen?
Mhm.
And listening and feeling, like the party pooper or the person that is not so fun
Yeah.
is a safer place to be than putting yourself in danger. It's hard to know that, though, because I don't know, I just think it's hard to know, unless you're really in touch with your body. I do a lot of that sensory work, where do you feel it in your body? What are you
Mhm.
feeling? And there's so much information that our bodies give us.
I've heard you say many times to trust your gut, and that really is key. Trust your gut. If you don't feel that you're safe, you don't feel that this is a comfortable situation, don't ignore it.
Yeah.
It's funny that this did not happen to me recently. I was not in a position where I was unsafe as far as sexual assault or rape, but I was meeting with a potential client in person, and my gut just kept telling me, why are you doing this? You don't meet potential clients in person, especially male clients. And I just had this gut feeling of, I shouldn't be working with this person, there's just something off. And I just kept ignoring it, and I could have kicked myself, because I agree, you have to listen to your gut. You really need to tune into it. And if it says this isn't safe or a good idea for whatever reason, then listen to it. Just be safe.
Yeah.
So is a lot of the times when you talk to someone that has been a victim of sexual assault or rape, when you start to really get to know them, is a common thing they kind of knew? And is that why you kind of mentioned that? Like when they start to recollect all the steps that led them to it, is a common thing that they say, oh, you know what? My gut was saying to not go with that guy, or something told me not to go there with her, or something like that.
Yeah. Like a lot of times, yes. Not, and again, I am not, I am a small research sample of
Yes.
therapy. So I know there's people out there that said, no, 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 never, never, never did I feel this way.
Yes.
But in my experience, and the groups that I've led or the people that I've talked to, there were little moments. College students where a group of friends were going out and this one guy was there, and I felt really uncomfortable around him. He kept finding me. I felt really uncomfortable, but I didn't want to stay home. I didn't want to be everybody always says I'm the party pooper. I didn't want to stay home. And then found themselves in a really scary situation. So that's kind of, it might not be an exact, no, you don't know what you're feeling. And I think that's the tricky part. You feel your gut, something's saying it's off, but we are creatures of knowledge, and we want to know, well, why? And we question it. Animals never question it.
Curiosity.
Yes, they say this is, if you watch your dog, this is weird, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
They don't, their back tail goes up and they're out of here. And
it's like to be more instinctual.
Yes. Yes, so much. I told Andrea about this, but The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. I highly recommend for anyone that is unsure of how to navigate safety in these situations or how to avoid violent behavior. He is a profiler of violence. So he helps, kind of say, hey, it's the easiest to detect. And when The Gift of Fear, he calls it just listening to your body.
Yeah. Now you were mentioning that the scenario of someone at a party feeling like the party pooper or feeling like they're not cool.
Right.
And Andrea and I were talking in a pre-show or whatever about how there's this glamorization of domestic violence and being not being the I guess you would call it in the outcast or the wallflower, whatever you want to call it. You have to join the party if you want to have a great life. You have to be a part of the social scene if you want to find love and stuff. Right. And people find themselves in weird situations that don't align with who they are. Do you feel that the glamorization of all of that, of domestic violence being a part of relationships, like in music, it's always this dramatic, romance. He hit me, but it was okay. Or, she was running after me. I was cheating on her. And there's this glamorization of domestic violence and sexual assault in music, film, and movies. Do you feel that is what's pushing a lot of this on people?
Sure. I mean, even, I don't know. I had to look up the director, writer, and producer, but Jennifer Sable Newsom did a film documentary on misrepresentation. And it's about, it argues about the objectification of women and how, in media, in music, in movies, how it's sexy, right? It's sexy. It's, women are being touted as these, sex symbols, and men are, the ones that are overpowering them. And so our young people that are watching or looking, or young girls, or want to be like that. And it's like, if I'm not that, then who am I? And if I stand on the side and I make judgment on that, then I won't be part of the cool crowd. Or, I mean, I don't know. I'm older, so, I'm sure, some of my language might feel older, but I don't think it changes over time. I think we all have the same feelings. We all want to be loved. We all want to be respected, treated with integrity. And, it's again, we go back to, does it over dramatize? Sure. Not every domestic violence or rape happens the way the movies portray it. It's usually really in little moments as you move into the relationship. It's not, it's not always a black eye. Sometimes it's a degrading of somebody. And then if you accept the degradation, then maybe you'll accept, them choking you while you're having sex. I mean, those things are also seen as like, this is how we have sex, right? This is how he overpowers me. But
let me ask you this. Cardi B came out with a song, and I know there's been a lot of controversy over it, that really kind of glorifies the idea of being overpowered, or being hit. Do you think that, I mean, I'm assuming you're going to say yes to this, but could you maybe expand a little bit more on the damage that does on young people listening and singing along to songs like that?
Yeah. I mean, I have young clients that want to be just like Cardi B, right? I mean, I had a client that used to say, oh, everything was Cardi B, and, she's just one of them, right? But sure, these are, when you're impressionable, you're 12, 13, 14, you're looking at sports, you're looking at music, you're looking at movies, and how they project, relationships and sex and love. And a lot of times, parents are so afraid of their children at that age. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to seem uncool. And so there's this whole like gap of, I don't know. It's such a hard subject because, we don't know how it plays out in their life until they're older, because we don't know, because usually when you're that age, you're just kind of figuring yourself out. And you don't know if it's going to affect them. But I think absolutely 100% be in touch with, all of those kinds of things. Help your children, help young people, even if you don't have children, even if you're a mentor, help them figure out, because I don't know, real sex, real love. I read something the other day that help your children, help young people learn how to be in love in ordinary situations. It's not all this big flash, big extraordinary, real love isn't, sometimes it's just like kicking back and doing something really boring.
Yeah.
Kanan and I talked about that a little bit on a previous show about how reality TV, and not to pinpoint the same one over and over again, but like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette,
Mhm.
make it look like dating is supposed to be this grand experience, and it's not. That's not real life for most people. If you
Mm-mm.
are 1% of the population and you can afford to have dates
Sure.
on a helicopter ride, then
Right.
great, good for you. But most of us can't afford that.
Yeah, or you could take something as like the show. Not that we're bashing these shows, but these are just really
Right.
good examples.
Yeah, these are
Um,
things people watch.
like
Right.
Jersey Shore, where in
Mhm.
these relationships, it was always about getting really drunk and
Oh,
fighting. And if you weren't fighting with your lover in the street, then you don't have. I remember growing up in a lot of music, a lot of like R&B sometimes, and in hip hop, and even in some rock music and country music. There's always, songs about this passionate. They're fighting, they're
yes.
fighting, they're fighting, and that's all you hear when you hear
Right.
love songs. It's like,
Right.
oh, he had his hands around my neck, but I loved it, and yada yada yada.
Yes.
And if you're singing this, I
Right.
almost feel like we're conditioning ourselves
Sure.
to
Yes.
to 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 say, you know what, that's okay because that's how things have
Mhm.
been. I was thinking about this movie. You going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, well, yeah, I was just going to say, and the message is that's what love is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the conditioning that's happening.
Right. And I remember, and this was a long time ago when I was younger, and I had a good friend who was, interested in a guy that I couldn't tell her necessarily that he wasn't interested in her, because I could tell he wasn't interested in her, but
Mhm,
she was doing all of these things, trying to be somebody that she wasn't, just to make him happy.
mhm,
And she had planned on painting her apartment one night, and he called, and she was going to drop everything and go and see him. And I said, if he cares about you, he will come. She goes, but it sounds fun to go up there in LA and hang out with him. I said, if he cares about you, he'll come down with a paintbrush and a glass of wine,
yeah.
because the boring stuff is exciting when you're with somebody that cares for you.
Mhm. Is that a form of like a microaggression that people use in domestic violence situations where it's like, you only do what I want to do?
Oh, for sure. Well, it's yes, it's a form of control, right? It's
Control.
they
Okay.
make the decision.
Hmm.
But I think also it's really important that domestic violence is subtle. It sometimes comes on strong, like The Bachelor, right? I'm going to buy this for you. I'm going to do this for you. And it
Hmm.
becomes this exciting, and then this high, then it's this low. And when it's this high, it's like, oh my gosh, he loves me so much. It's quick to love, quick to get commitment, quick to all those quicks that your body's saying, gosh, wow, he's different than I ever experienced it, or she's different than I ever imagined. And then it's a real drop. And so then it's like, and then it's a cycle of violence, and it's a cycle of power and control. So the power, and then you get in the relationship, and then when the other part happens where it kind of wanes off, and then the abuse happens,
Hmm.
and then this other part comes back up where they come back and they're like, I'm so sorry, I was having a bad day, let me win you over, let's go to Hawaii. Let me buy you flowers, I'll take you to dinner, I'll wine and dine you, because then you're the queen again. And it's so it really, it can really play on your psyche of, is this really what's happening, or is it me? And
Yeah.
it's always comes back to, is it me? It must be me, because he's so amazing, and all
Yeah.
these people think I met Prince Charming.
Hmm.
With that in mind, something that we talked a lot about when we both were at the women's shelter is Stockholm syndrome.
Mhm.
Comes up a lot. It's trauma bonding. For our listeners who aren't really familiar with Stockholm syndrome, we call it a plain English, simple It's a psychological bond between the victim and their captor. And while we don't always look at domestic violence as, well, they can leave whenever they want, that's not a captor situation. It is. They feel trapped. These people feel trapped in these relationships. And a lot of times it is because of children being involved, not being able to leave because they don't want to lose custody of the children. But I'd love to take a second to kind of talk a little bit about the Stockholm syndrome, that trauma bonding, and whether or not you think that, is it possible for a victim to really break that bond? What does it take to break that dependency?
Well, obviously, as a therapist, I think it's 100% possible for people to break that bond. It's not easy to break the bond, especially when there's kids involved, especially when there's a lifetime of, usually domestic violence comes from wounds that happen long before the relationship happens. So, I grew up in a family of domestic violence, and then had a long healing process of my own. So when I actually worked at Stand Strong, I thought, I didn't really, I knew that I came from domestic violence, and that was a word that I threw around in my own life. But as a therapist of domestic violence, I got to hear women's stories over and over and over again. And some women left and some women couldn't. And so I think it's really important to meet people where they are. The goal is never to make somebody leave, the goal is always to enlighten their experience. So as they become enlightened and empowered in their own voice, and as they get reassured that some of these behaviors are not quote unquote normal, that being loved and feeling worthy is their right. I think it becomes easier to separate the two. So a lot of times people will come in and they'll feel like they're to blame. It's all their fault. If they could just be more patient, more generous, more forgiving. He says he loves me. Can I, so it's a real kind of undoing step by step that story. And so, yes, people can heal. Leaving, because how often do we hear, friends say, just leave him, just leave, or just leave the
Easier
situation.
said than done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much easier. And we can't fully understand it all the time until we really hear somebody's story.
You've mentioned that people have that bond. Is that partly why you see people who are in those situations stick up for the partner? Like a friend will say, I know something is happening. You're not telling me what. Something is happening. And then they're like, no. He's so stressed at work. He got this promotion. So he's just, he's very tense right now. But trust me, everything is okay. Just be my friend.
He loves me.
He loves me. Is that part of what makes people stick up for their abusers when they know that it's like they're so afraid? I mean, what do you think is happening in their mind?
I don't think they know. I think that they have glimpses of knowing. And there's that hope. I think the hope of, what if he really does love me? And I'm going to walk away from this 70% really great relationship. And yeah, a lot of times he abuses me. And so it's like really getting into that empathy piece of, this person is really like, they're connected, and there's that worth piece. If somebody's never been loved in a real way, how can you tell them that this person doesn't love them? If they've never really experienced acceptance and love. I don't know if that's answering your question, but I think it's just, I don't know that they know.
Wow.
And that's why the story takes, like, there's moments of knowing, and then there's moments of denial. And really we call that in therapy, when we talk about trauma therapy, we call that the window of I think it's the window of opportunity, or the window of awareness. Sorry, the window of awareness.
Okay.
And so there's this window, right? And if I can open it just a little bit and have some awareness in there, the goal of therapy is to be able to help that client open it bigger. So if I can see that sometimes I know that this relationship is abusive, if I can grab that sometimes and like really work towards opening it, well, when isn't it abusive? And when is it? And should abuse ever be in a relationship? And so you really have to just really kind of nuance it. It's like a window that has a lot of paint stuck around it. You gotta really,
you have to like chip it out.
really chip out that paint.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that's a good way to explain it, but
I think it's a great way to explain it.
The window still opens, you just have to put in some effort.
Yeah, and you have to be patient. And a lot of times they think friends. That's why I think a therapist, a coach, a support group, books. I mean, I had a client that all they did was listen in on these Audible books because their partner wouldn't let them go to therapy. And so there was just Audible book after Audible book. And so by the time they were able to get to therapy, they had a lot of information. They're like, okay, next step is therapy. And, and that was really amazing for this client to be able to just like hear and be validated. But sometimes it just takes time, and friends get tired.
Yeah, that's for sure. Sometimes.
Yeah.
So much you can carry on your shoulders as a friend.
Yeah. And it's not really their job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to go out with your friends and have a good time. And it's really hard when somebody's in abuse.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're going to kind of spin this conversation back a little bit because, I really want to talk about consent. I feel like consent is on the forefront of the conversation these days. We talk about consent is sexy. And in fact, Janine shared with me a video. I can't believe I'd never seen it.
It's great, isn't it?
He consented, and I showed it to Kanan, and we watched it, and we were just like,
it was amazing. It was an amazing video.
And isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
I do think everyone should probably watch it. It is a really cool video on YouTube. We are not in any way associated with this video. It's just a really fabulous way to look at consent, and they compare it to tea.
Yeah. And it's been out since 2015, which is the crazy part. So it's been around so long. And I'm like, how did this not come across like any of these? I don't know. It's just, it's strange, the things that get passed around versus the things that don't. It's like the things that get passed around are the things that reinforce bad habits versus the message that breaks those habits. It's wild. It's so wild.
Can I ask a quick question? What did you guys, when you watched the tea consent, what did you guys think? I mean, when you like watched it, what was the takeaway from it?
For me, it was how absurd the expectation is for someone to like, here, drink the tea, just drink the damn tea. And it's just like, when you put it like that, it's like,
Yeah.
I agree. I just thought, I understand consent, but I really appreciated the fact that they showed all these different scenarios of if someone asked for tea and then they passed out, you're not going to open their mouth and pour the tea down their throats. Like no one in their right mind would ever do that. So why do we think it's okay to do that in
sex?
You're right. In the heat of the moment with sex. So here's my thought. So a lot of times I hear people say that they get very confused about consent. Um, they're in the heat of the moment. They're making out, whatever they're doing, and they're not sure if they still have consent, right? Because just because you're kissing someone and you're making out with them doesn't mean you're giving consent for sex. So, how do you think, are there ways to ask for consent and in a sexy way to keep that romantic momentum going without losing that in the moment feel, but still being able to ask somehow for consent?
Yeah, that's a great one. And I struggled with this question because, like, is consent sexy? Does it have to be sexy? Right? I mean,
It
I
just has to be
know
there.
it has to be there. And, one of the things, and again, I mentioned the gift of fear, and one of his things he says is no is a complete sentence. I love that,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and so,
It needs no explanation.
right, right. And so I really believe that relationships are about any kind of relationship, right? At any point we say yes to a date, or yes, I want to get to know you better, we have entered into a contract, an unspoken contract. And we put our best foot forward when we meet someone. And so I fully believe that the best way to test any relationship is as we speak up. And if I'm speaking up, or if I'm not speaking up, if I'm afraid, if I am in a position where I'm making out with somebody and we are, enjoying, that part, and I'm saying, I don't really want to go any further. And again, I'm going to talk about trusting my body. And if my body is saying, gosh, I know in the past I've had really bad relationships where I've said no, where I've haven't given consent, but this person seems different, right? This person seems to be a listener, this person seems to be safe. What a great way to test my new skills, right? By saying no. I really like you. I'm really enjoying making out with you, but I really want to take it slow. If the other partner gets angry, gets upset, that's a really good test, right?
Huge red flag.
Right? But if the other partner says, "Oh my gosh, I completely understand. Let's take it at your pace." That is a really amazing opportunity for that relationship. And so I fully believe that as we enter into relationships and we begin to test one another with our needs, our wants, our pace, I love that we get to give each other an opportunity to show us who they are. And that is what happens when good relationships begin to blossom. When somebody is like, I want to go as fast as you want to go, or I'm not going to push you until, unless you say it's okay, or no, I want to wait too. I mean, it's not always the woman, or, a lot of men want to take things slow.
Mhm.
I happen to be in a really great relationship, and I just wanted to develop a friendship first, and he was so awesome about that, and it gave me a chance to really like go, oh wait, I like him, like he's respecting me, he's listening. And that to me is, so I don't know if that answers, like, how is it sexy. I think it's just an opportunity to build on the relationship. The more you speak up, if you're afraid of saying no, that's information. And it could be your own past experience, or it could be the person that you're with. And what better way to test it than to say, hey, I'd like to wait and see their response. People get to show up, and relationships get to grow or not, no matter how sexy you say it or not.
We hear so often, and women especially, say, I told him no,
Mm,
and he tried to convince me.
mm,
Or he does the, come on, baby, just, it's okay. It'll be fun. We'll have a good
mm.
time. And
Yeah,
it's tough. And
it
I think a
is.
lot of people, if you haven't been in that situation before, it's hard to imagine it. But I get it. Like, I've been in those situations
Mhm.
where men will start to almost beg,
Mm,
like, come on, let's just
Yeah.
do it anyways. And it's like, ew. But
Yeah.
for a woman, it's not just ew, it's, oh my God, what situation am I in right now? We have to
mhm.
quickly assess, where am I? Are there any other
Yes.
people around? Is there anyone that could help me? If he
Oh,
absolutely ends up saying, I don't care that you're saying no, am I
mhm.
going to now be in a situation where I'm about to be raped?
Right.
So it would
That
be
was just
wonderful if men could start finding ways to just ask for that consent,
yeah.
and to understand that when she says no, just let it go.
Hmm.
It's like
That
some
could be a
guys,
t-shirt.
that should be a t-shirt because it's like,
When she says no, let it go.
let it go. That should be, yeah, put that in your shop. That's actually the
I am.
storyline for the movie Promising Young Woman that came out last
Hmm.
year that was hitting all the. I had such a passionate response to that movie because the subject matter is sexual assault and rape.
Hmm.
And I didn't like how it ended because I felt like in the end we're reinforcing the imagery that a woman, that man will always win, and I don't like that narrative in anything.
Hmm.
But I kind of feel like a lot of boys are being trained or being told you have to be an alpha male. You have to go out there. If a girl says no, she wants you to be like,
Hmm.
no, I'm a man here. I'm going to take control. You want me to take control. You want me to be like Hercules. You want me to be like the
Hmm.
most powerful. It's what the TV tells me. It's what all
Hmm.
my bros are telling me. So I would imagine a lot of young girls are in that situation where they're with a guy that feels that way, where there's might be one girl where they're like, oh, I love that. That's so sexy. But there are people who do get scared of that and don't want to be
Hmm.
involved in that.
Sure.
And it's
There's, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I was going to say that there's that Andrea knows the Instagram, um, a call to men. As it Porter, I think is the guy's name, and he started a whole movement, a call to men, and it's just about how men can empower other men and how men protect women. And I think the more men that stand up and say, no, no, that's not cool,
It's not.
it's not cool. And where men have, because you're right, Kanan, men aren't sure how to be a man. And it's not just a woman problem, it's a man problem, because they're seeing, like you said, they're seeing the same media that girls are seeing.
Mhm.
And and I think it's really important that we begin rehabilitizing men as well. How do you stand up for your sister? How do
Exactly. It's like
Yeah,
the people that are raping people. It's like, do you not have a mother? Do you not have a
yeah,
sister? Do you not have a niece or any female relatives
yeah,
at all?
yeah,
Or a woman in your life that you love. Like it could be a neighbor,
yes,
a
yeah,
mentor, anything. It's
yeah.
just like how I just
Right. Or a guy friend that says that's not cool.
or or
Don't talk
that.
about her that way.
Yeah. It's like I remember right before the last president was into office, they calling it locker room talk. And I'm like, and then there were some women that were protecting that
Yes.
saying, oh,
Hmm.
boys will be boys. I'm like,
Oh,
do you not understand you're
no.
reinforcing the environment that
Yes.
allows rape and sexual assault to happen by just
Yes.
saying boys will be boys? That should not even
Yeah.
be said. That should not
Yeah.
happen. There's no such thing as locker room talk. That's rape talk.
No.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's insane. It's insane. Whew.
I love how passionate you are about it, because I'm just on the other side, as impassioned about it as you are.
Yeah. Well, we need to slowly bring ourselves down, but I do want to ask you this. You mentioned trauma a few times in the show. Someone has gone through that. And you, at the top of the show, you talked about ways therapy is one way to channel those and get through those feelings. Have you seen people successfully break that block of being either raped or put in a position where they're just so completely uncomfortable and they feel like they can never trust again? But have you seen someone break that block and were able to start dating or finding love or even just being sexual again?
Yeah, I think that is a really good question. You know, I don't always get to see the end result of the work that we do, because, you know, I can't call them up and, and find out.
Yeah.
But I do get to hear about, oh, I met somebody and this person is a really safe person. And I said this, and, you know, they respected my no, or I left my abuse and I'm healing, and I can see now how abused I was. Or so yeah, so it's really profound to be on this part of the journey with people where they become empowered. Or I've had people say, you ask me, where do I feel it in my body? And I had no idea what you were talking about until I had this experience. And I was like, I felt it in my jaw and I just wanted to get out of there. And I said, I gotta go. I'm not going out with you, and left. And so like, there is so many ways that people have healed, that people have become aware, that they have then healed and begun to date, found really lovely partners. And I'm a testament of that. I'm also somebody that's been a victim of domestic violence, and it took time and therapy and reading and listening and saying no, and being able to be in a really sweet relationship where my partner can't stand men that treat women badly. And, you know, we're partners 100%. And, you know, we were talking about the sexy stuff, you know, he leaves water next to my bed every night. You know?
That's pretty sexy.
Like, he just makes sure I have a glass of water, you know? And I think it's just like these little sweet things that we can have, that I don't have to, you know, I don't have to take care of the whole relationship, you
That's
know?
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Janine, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I know that our listeners are probably going to have a lot of questions, but I want them to feel reassured to know that we are going to drop a couple links into this episode's details. We'll drop a link for the T consent video.
I love
So
it.
Oh my
you
God, I
guys
love
can
it.
I love
watch
it.
that video. It's definitely worth it. In fact, we might drop the link for both the explicit versus the, you know, show this one to your kids, no swearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they do drop an F-bomb quite a bit.
Yeah.
The other link that we're going to share with you guys is the link for a call to men, because I do actually think it's very important that men start educating themselves and educating other men. So I think that'll be a really important link to share with you guys. And if you have any questions, you can always email us at datesmartersexier@gmail.com. Until next time.
Thank you guys so much. You're doing such a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janine, for joining us today.